Hello there, I'm Royce Pentaghast. I'm an artist, writer, radio producer, and amateur filmmaker. I studied graphic design for a few years, as well as film and art for a few years before that. And as a fan of Star Wars, I'm interested not just in the characters and story, but a series' many elements of art and design. I've looked at the evolution of designs over the series, examined how concepts are brought to the screen, and it's interesting to see how different creatives can misinterpret designs, and how mistakes in production can have interesting implications for the series lore. Like, for example, do Twi'leks have hair? Twi'leks, or Twi'leks, were first introduced in 1983's Return of the Jedi, represented by Oola and Bib Fortuna. They're humanoid mammalian aliens, whose skin tones come in a wide variety of shades. Their most defining features are two tapered tentacles called headtails, or lekku, that extend off the backs of their head. The species wasn't named until 1987, in the Star Wars sourcebook by West End Games. They'd go on to feature in greater prominence through the prequels, the expanded universe, and now are represented by proper characters like Hera Syndulla and Devon Azara.
If you look at the makeup effects and what they tried to do in each of the feature films, male Twi'leks have lobes, ears like you and I, but females have cones. If you look at the actual sculpt, it's foam rubber, so it's actually pretty squishy. So as a result, you're able to put tight headphones or wrappings or anything over the Twi'leks' cones and not have to worry about them sticking out.
Right on. Very interesting. Thanks.
Based on Bib Fortuna, the men tend to have prominent bumps on their forehead and distended skulls, as you can see on the military leader, Cham Syndulla. While the male Twi'leks were accomplished through a full seamless makeup job, the application for the women sees less prosthetics and a lot more body paint. The lekku are an appliance worn over the head, with the seam covered by some form of headdress, cap or wrap in live action. This has led to a few instances where the performer's hair can be visible sticking out from underneath. I thought this was the case with Oola, but it's more subtle in the film than I remember, and it's mostly present in promo pictures. Either way, it's a production mistake, nothing more. But remember, in the context of the Star Wars story, Oola isn't a human woman painted green with prosthetics on her head. She's a naturally green-skinned Twi'lek woman, who in the film has some hair sticking out from under her headband. But why am I talking about Twi'leks having hair to begin with? Well, when I was first getting into Star Wars, I'd read every book I could from the library, take out every game I could from Blockbuster, and spend hours reading through the Star Wars wiki, Wikipedia. And I remember reading back in 2009 on the Twi'lek page, it said that the lekku stored body fat, their temperature ran higher than humans, and they had no hair whatsoever on their bodies, not even eyebrows. And the reason why we see Twi'leks with eyebrows is because they would tattoo them on. Of course, this is just something to explain why the Twi'leks have eyebrows, because, I mean, in the comics, artists need to make their characters emote, so yeah, give them eyebrows. And for the background actors, I mean, who's going to shave their eyebrows just for this? But I went to go check on Wikipedia to kind of remind myself, and the fact simply isn't there. So in order to check it, I need to do a bit of time travel. Viewing the Wikipedia of 2009 through the Wayback Machine is such a blast from the past. It really shows how user interface design has evolved over the years into something much cleaner and not obtrusive at all. Something else lacking from the old Wikipedia is properly annotated sources. There simply aren't many, if any. The eyebrow factor's just there. The only annotation I see on this page is here, where even the editors of the wiki are questioning where this eyebrow thing came from. Now, there probably is some obscure novel or comic that makes reference to this, but it's not listed here. Notably, it does point out the very Bib Fortuna-looking Bok Aseka from the game Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2 does have body hair, but again, this is just, the actor's hair. Is he really going to shave it off for this game? Now let's take a look at their skulls again. As lorekeeper Pablo Hidalgo said, the Twi'lek men have lobes, regular ears, that vary in size and shape, while the women have these horns, or cones. They're described as squishy, so they're like a cartilage or something like real ears, not part of their skull. We've seen one somewhat official depiction of a Twi'lek skull. This was an accessory for an unreleased Rancor toy. Seeming to represent Oola, that is her headdress, the skull remains somewhat human in shape, with these horns still present on the headdress. She has really big horns, much bigger than any other Twi'leks we've seen since. They're probably not her real horns, just decoration. Because the horns, the cones, they're a physical sex characteristic of Twi'lek women, in the way that prominent breasts are a sex characteristic of women, and prominent facial hair is a sex characteristic of men. And because of this, maybe the cones are viewed in a somewhat desirable way. Ula's headgear is like a sparkling push-up brassiere for the ears, while these servers from the Book of Boba Fett are wearing leather to suggestively hint to their own. Talking about production mistakes, that program does seem to mistake the cones as being present for all Twi'leks. Lore written after the fact just justifies them in the story as a flirtatious fashion choice. Finally getting to the lekku, the Twi'leks' whole deal. I mean, the name literally comes from twin lekku. They're prehensile appendages that can apparently move in a form of communication, though we've never seen this in live action or animation outside some expressive actions. They're said to be packed with nerve endings, being sensitive to touch, painful when handled harshly, and alluded to being treated as erogenous zones. Also, they're said to contain a part of the Twi'lek's brain. Now, this has led some people who see this fact to wonder if they have holes in their skulls. I mean, if you know what skulls are for, containing the brains, doesn't really seem ideal or feasible. But I mean, we do have aliens in Star Wars with exposed brains. Might be worth looking into later. I thought maybe the skulls extended up into the lekku, but we don't have confirmation of that. Even if some of the men's skulls seem weirdly shaped, there's, no real indication that they'd look any different. Again, what's the source of this? Like, maybe if we could find a source, we'll be able to get to the bottom of this. Let's see, the present-day Wikipedia lists them. 2002's book, The New Essential Guide to Characters, is cited for the hair fact, and 2005's The New Essential Guide to Alien Species for the rest. I've scoured the first book, and the only mention of Twi'leks is Bib Fortuna, who was marked in the hair section relating to colour as having none, which seems to have been applied for all members of the species. Now for the brain fact, the second book says this. These fatty, tapered prehensile growths serve both sensual and cognitive functions, including the storing of memories. Now, memories are not brains. It seems like someone just looked at this statement that the lekku store memories and thought that was synonymous with brain, the pink goopy organ inside the skull. The official source says memories. The articles that come after say brains, and are wrong. But how would the lekku store memories without brains? We don't even need to look to the world of science fiction to find other creatures that have different methods of storing memory and forming intelligence. Jellyfish. Not very human or Twi'lek from the outset, but their memories and intelligence is stored through a nervous system spread through their entire body. And we know the Twi'lek's lekku were said to be packed with nerves, and that could likely be the place for memory storage. It's mostly sea creatures that don't have traditional brains, but on dry land even plants have a form of memory. And while Twi'leks aren't jellyfish, sponges or trees, in this space opera fantasy with faster-than-light travel and a mystical force, it's perfectly feasible the Twi'lek's nervous system through the lekku store memory. The lekku do not contain their brains as we would think of them, and if they do have holes in their skulls, it's for nerves from their head tails to connect to the traditional brain organ in their skull. The guidebook goes on to cite a comic where Ayla Secura was heavily drugged, lost her memories for an extended period of time. I could go on further, but this just seems to be something the guidebook authors wrote to give an explanation to a common amnesia story trope. So while trying to solve one mystery about the Twi'leks, I somewhat accidentally gone and solved a few others. How about the rest? What else did the Wikipedia say? The lekku was said to store body fat, or Ayla Secura, who's pretty athletic, and Hera Syndulla, same deal. Both of theirs are pretty small. Sulor Quain's are quite a bit thicker. She's a mother of two and a farmer. She's not a Jedi or a soldier, so if this claim is correct, well, there you go. Bib Fortuna lives a life of relative luxury, and his head tails are quite a bit longer and fatter. When Jabba dies and Bib goes on to run that arm of the cartel, he evidently had access to Jabba's stash, and his lekku filled up and so did the rest of his body. So yeah, I guess that kinda works, but it does just feel like a bit of a justification for why most of the Twi'lek women we see are skinny women. How about this? The Twi'lek's body temperature runs hot, justifying why they're dressed so scantily clad. It also noted that their temperature rises when they're fearful or stressed, something that a video on the Star Wars website databank seems to rather poorly make light of in the scene where the literal sex slave Ula is shown to be dancing for her life.
In fact, their body temperatures are higher than average humanoids and get hotter when in fear. So if they're dancing for their life in Jabba's palace, it's safe to say they're sweating up a storm. Additional fun fact.
and Twi'leks having no body hair. The New Essential Guide to Alien Species book also mentions they have smooth skin, which implies a lack of hair. Well, let us not forget the 90s and 2000s was a time where people in Western society were shamed for having body hair. It just so happens that when the Twi'leks came into prominence in stories as sexy aliens was when waxing and shaving was seen as the norm, as necessary and desirable. So the Twi'leks really are just shaping up to be some 2000s era sexy alien fantasy. All these justifications just to explain why Twi'leks were made sexy, because creators didn't want to admit they just wanted to see colourful hot alien women. Maybe there's earnest creators trying to make sense of a bunch of different sexualised story elements. Maybe it's lecherous writers trying to excuse their fantasies. Dan Olson of Folding Ideas did a short video on what he called the Thermian argument. It uses the 90s sci-fi pastiche Galaxy Quest as a lens for which to examine how in-universe justifications for a writer's choices can be used for bad. Linked in the description. After years of just being seen as sex objects, we've recently had much more nuanced takes on the Twi'leks. Starting with the Clone Wars Season 1, we meet Cham Syndulla, and later his daughter Hera in the Rebels series and beyond. A lot of the features that were once associated with the species aren't really present here, but I'm going to do my best to try and marry it all together. Twi'leks are a humanoid species from the humid world of Ryloth, with prehensile tentacle-like appendages growing from their heads called lekku. Packed with nerve endings, the lekku store memories, are sensitive to touch, are sacred in their society, and used for communication. They also store body fat, which is helpful on a dangerous world where food can be scarce. Twi'leks who have reached high standing through politics or the exploitation of their own kind have greater access to food, where their gluttonous behaviour has exceeded their storage capacity of their lekku. Twi'lek women have cones in place of ears. These could be seen as desirable. They're either enhanced or hidden away from view in their society, and worn more freely in multicultural environments. Twi'leks do have body hair, used to regulate their body temperature, that runs higher than humans. Perhaps the males remove their facial hair, even their eyebrows, through shaving or plucking because of some cultural reason, while women keep theirs. The density and prominence of body hair varies amongst individuals, generally existing as a light fuzz on their face and heads. Thicker growth on the temples and above is often just covered up by headwear. It'd be cool if those in charge of the law for Star Wars would create more hard rules about the ins and outs of various species. You know, it'd be beneficial for their depiction across different mediums, and help to keep things cohesive. I just hope that if they do that, they actually take time to think things through, and not just leap to conclusions based off misinterpreted information, which has happened a lot. Thank you for watching. I've had this idea on back burner for well over a year, and after finishing those first two videos I thought, well, why not use this productivity and get this one out as well? Whatever concepts would you like to see me explore in future? I am going to do some more clone troopers, and I have a few things on different characters here and there. I was going to say as well, if I had a chance to tell a Star Wars story, what would I do? In relation to the Twi'leks and this lore I'd just discovered and come up with. But then I thought, well, I have actually made a Star Wars story, haven't I? Stick around for that. Thank you for watching. I'm Royce, and I'll see you next time.